This is the story of Trauma Team in Cyberpunk 2077, issue 3 of 4. The third installment picks up where the second left off. Nadia has a gun against the head of the cyber psycho that had wiped out her entire first team. In the middle of fighting off an animal gang in the new mission where they're extracting said psycho that had killed Nadia's friends and her former lover, Dodds, we see that she has finally snapped in the middle of the mission. The cyber psycho on his knees feels the gun pressed against his head, and Nadia looks like she's contemplating whether to pull the trigger, and he looks back over her, gravely wounded and obviously in need of extraction. But still, his lips peel and a smile is across his face, and he seems to relish in Nadia's own discomfort and I guess her moment of crisis. Nap, however, grabs Nadia's gun. The rest of the trauma team seem to be more or less amoral when it comes to completing a mission, and Nadia's crisis is at one of the worst times possible as the animal gang is coming down on top of them. And even though she says to not Nap, that he killed her entire team, the cyber psycho takes a moment to let her know that, and he enjoyed it. But Strata doesn't let up and says to Nadia to drop it. With the gun out of her hand, he tells her again, just as Dodds had told her former lover, this is the damn job. Get your head on straight. Strata then explains to the team that they're going to have to get out of there and that they need to really focus up. Then we get a flashback to Nadia telling the psychologist in the previous episodes that she was ready to get back out there because she can't sit around. After her first team had been wiped out, the cyber psycho really took a toll on Nadia. She had flashbacks, she lost her lover and her friends, but she still decided to become a part of the trauma team once again, even though ironically she's suffering her own acute trauma. As they head down the stairs, the psycho remarks that they're probably not going to get out in time because whatever he did to the voodoo boys, he pissed them off real good. And you can see that Nadia is kind of trudging behind him without a weapon, and this is a very tense situation. We flash back to Nadia in the psychology office, and she says that sitting around after what had happened to the first team is only going to drive her crazy. Now obviously whatever trauma she's suffering is percolated up in the middle of this mission, which can cost not only her but her entire team and the psycho, their ward so to speak, their lives. The psycho keeps on talking about how there was an easy gig and it was good money and that he was going to ice the gang's boss man. He said, I didn't think that they loved him. Now they're raging, lashing out and going wild. It would be interesting to find out who this boss was that was beloved by the animals, but we don't have a clear indicator yet as to who it is. Quick flashback to Nadia, who says that she can help the company and that she can help clients. Unfortunately, she's thinking that helping people is the goal or objective of Trauma Team when it is to extract high-paying clients. That's it. And obviously, collateral on the way, whether it be her own team or civilians or anybody who isn't the target, but it hasn't really sunk in for Nadia yet. The cyber psycho turns around to the trauma team and actually gives them a handy piece of advice. He says, look, if you really want to get through this, you're gonna have to cut through the gang before they cut through you, which makes sense. They're locked in, they're like rats in a trap. But he says, you're gonna need to get wild too. And it's a strange parallel to what Nadia is expected to do. To save some clients, she's going to have to put her own morality aside. And Cyber Psycho is being very pragmatic by saying, look, if you want to survive this, you're gonna have to do the same thing, except on my level. So in a dark way, he's actually mirroring the trauma team, because if he has a target instead of a client and he wants to kill them, he has to become wild. And obviously who knows what type of drugs or what type of enhancements he takes to get onto that mental level where, as we saw in the previous issue, he was really just like a maniac. He was off his head basically. We then switch back to Nadia, who talks about helping others, and that's how I can best help myself. Obviously, she feels racked with guilt over Dodd's death, her lover, and she thinks that by going back into the field that she's going to help, she's going to be a good part of society, and it's going to heal her fractured soul. Little did she know she was going to be in this predicament. The cyber psycho then takes a moment, pauses, and casually says, "Maybe you should have just killed me." Really just lapping up the whole predicament that Nadia's in, which Nap tells her to stay cool and that he's baiting her. And just before he can finish his sentence, Nap gets hit with a burst of fire. The animals are above them and are taunting the trauma team as they hail bullets down upon them. Strata says, "Get your head down and get behind me." The psycho kind of just looks up like, "Huh, they've come for us." But Nap is in pretty bad shape, or so it seems. But he says that they just knocked the wind out of him and his body armor took the worst of it. But with the blood spray, it doesn't seem that the wind was the only thing knocked out of him. Now we see a lot of blood starting to pool. Even though he says he thinks he'll be alright, they're really still in a bind, and Strata is laying suppressive fire and tells Nadia to get some cover and obviously try and heal him. They need their numbers up. The animal gang is pressing the assault. Whatever the cyber psycho did, it has made them go into a frenzy. Nadia then says to Nap that he's going to be alright and that he's going to get patched up. And the cyber psycho says, "What did I tell you? Wild." And he's right. You have to go to the next level to survive some things. The psycho says that your boy's not going to hold him off for long, and even if he does, there's more coming. Nadia, still concerned with saving lives, says that she needs cover to treat his wounds. But the psycho says, "Told you," as more animals start to come from below as well. The psycho opens a room and they bust inside and look for one of the apartments to get him out of hall and get Nap some cover as he's bleeding out. Strata then says they're going to have to be fast and throws a grenade back out at the animals in the hallway. And they don't see it in time and it explodes, obviously taking out whoever was in the hallway and has bought them some precious time. As they search for apartments, a woman is startled, obviously as you would be when you see this gaggle of people burst in, and they take refuge in her apartment. They go to take off Nap's armor to see how bad his wounds are, and the woman recognizes them as trauma team. It must be odd to see them without their helmets on. But the cyber psycho then says, "Look, we're just prey," as he settles down while Nadia tends to Nap's wounds. Strata then says that they've only bought themselves a few minutes tops and that they're trapped, so Nadia has to get to work at getting Nap on his feet. Nadia is desperate to save Nap. But as she is working on him, the mother then brings her child over and says, "Look, she's very sick and needs treatment. She needs help." Nadia then looks at the child as they are trapped in the room and the situation is escalating. And obviously, looking into a small, sick child's eyes has got to be a pretty rough situation, especially when she has the means to help her. But the situation is becoming more dire by the second. Strata is yelling at Nadia to tend to Nap and that they need him, obviously, to contend with the animals and that he has to get on his feet. But Nadia again is stunned in the middle of a mission. Strata by this time is screaming to Nadia, but unfortunately the cyber psycho predicts that things may be too late for Nap, and he seems to be losing consciousness with all the blood as well. And another team member dies in front of Nadia. Strata then asks Nadia if he's dead and blames her for his death, as the animals with pretty fingernail polish burst in, and they're coming down the hallway. Strata says that they're here. The mother, however, doesn't relent and says, "Can you help her? I'll let you stay here if you help my daughter." She's already trying to bargain, but by this time, Nadia's pretty useless. Strata, seeing the situation unfold, intervenes and pushes the mother away, saying, "Get away from her. You aren't a part of the mission." And unfortunately, that word seems to trigger Nadia. And she says, like, who cares about the mission? That little girl has every right to treatment. If a murderer deserves treatment, then so does that child. She's arguing the morality of Trauma Team as a whole, but Strata doesn't care about the context of the situation. All he cares about is a singular reality, and that is the child is not our client. But the cyber psycho pauses for a moment and says, like, let her look after the kid. What's the harm? We don't get out of this box and we're going to be dead anyway. Surprisingly, he then offers to do their job for them. He'll clear a path. All they need to do is give him a boost. And we see him wielding a butcher's knife as well as another kitchen knife. But Nadia says, a boost? You want me to give you a stim enhancement? I'm not going to. But then we see the cyber psycho go to work, and clearly he is a ballsy assassin, facing off against the animals who he has rightly pissed off. Now, Strata also, again, contests what Nadia says, saying, look, don't be stupid, we need him to get out of here, and he's already worth his weight in gold as he starts to tear apart the animals' gang as they're trying to shoot him. Imagine that, 2 knives, and he's still tearing them up thanks to his enhancements. Strata then gives him a boost and says, look, this isn't going to last. The kind of stress you're talking about is going to burn through your system. But we see that whatever the boost did was enough for him to totally move in such an inhuman way that he took out a bunch of animals with guns. And this is obviously before he started doing that. He tells Strata, after saying, you've got 1 minute before your body basically shuts down, give me another. And one of the best panels in this entire comic is seen. Just him relishing. His eyes and pupils dilated because he is high. We see the same manic expression that was on his face in the first issue in which he slaughtered Nadia's whole team, which brings to light that he himself has to boost himself into a frenzy, as I hypothesized before, and that maybe he wasn't fully coherent, that when he has a singular target like Trauma Team, that he puts everything aside, he amps himself up on whatever drugs or enhancements, and becomes, as he says, wild. With a final blow to one of the animals and 2 knives inside the chest of him as he lifts up a guy that looks like he's at least 350 pounds plus compared to the psycho's smaller frame, showing just how strong he is, whether it is the stims or his enhancements. He then is put in a headlock by another animal, and it's another great panel. You see that he is having the time of his life. Another awesome shot as we see his own smile in his blades. And instead of stabbing the animal, he bites into the flesh of his forearm. After the carnage that he has wrought, he just tore people apart, and he's having a good meditation session afterwards. Nadia, however, is more concerned with the little girl and asks about her fever and says, don't worry, you'll be alright. The psycho, covered in blood and red surrounding him, stumbles in the door holding his side. Strata behind Nadia, though, is still blaming her for the death of Nap, saying you didn't save Gordon, you didn't save Nap, and what now, you're gonna do everything you can to save a little rat? Nadia, with her Hippocratic ways, says that I'm a medic, I'm gonna do what I can to help her get off my back. She seems like she should have been a doctor, not a part of the trauma team. Strata, however, tells her wisely and then snaps himself, saying, I'm not the one that needs to learn their place. You're going to get us killed because you can't do your job, which is true. To do your job in full for the trauma team, it means losing people, collateral, as well as keeping focused on the goal at mind. Nothing else exists. But as he starts to strangle Nadia in a pretty brutal panel in front of the woman and her daughter, she then urges him to let her go, but Strata says, like, give me a reason, because she herself is collateral at this point, and you can see in his amoral mind, it's better to kill her and for the client to survive and himself than to have her as dead weight and stopping them. Nadia pulls out a pretty good reason with her gun and says, is this good enough? But the psycho, still stumbling about, obviously with his stimulants wearing off, says, I hate to interrupt, I really do, but the hall's clear and the stairwell too. But it won't be for long. All this bickering, they are still in the middle of animal territory and in grave danger. Strata then starts to rebuke Nadia further, saying, you made a big mistake. What do you think is going to happen when this is all clear? What do you think the company's going to do when I tell them how you've effed this all up? And the psycho doesn't miss a beat and says, it's nice to see my trauma team money is well spent. He's got a sense of humor in the situation, but it is true. He spent money on a service, but Nadia, I don't know why he gets off on her conflict. However, she does still focus on helping the little girl and leaves her some medicine. Strata is already trying to move on point and get out of the situation, but the psycho for a moment says, let her do her thing and give the kid a chance, which gives a little bit of a twist on the morality of this situation, where the psycho then becomes a little bit more moral than Strata. He wants to help a child. He may be a total psychopath that will stim himself up, become an assassin and kill everyone in the way of the target, but he still cares about kids. And this gives Nadia pause for a moment. She then pulls out some antibiotics and says give her one a day. They should help her kick whatever's out of her system. Obviously, this is a low socioeconomic place that they're in, and they probably can't afford to have access to antibiotics, but she just saved a kid, and she has her moment. She then gets back on point behind Strata and the psycho. It seems the psycho's moment of kindness has made her focus again on the job. I feel like she really needed that. Flashback to where she's on a date with Dodds before he passed, and she said, if it's between my life and clients, that's what she thinks about, is the amoral way that Dodds casually said when they were dating. Look, it's not an easy answer. We made a commitment to the company. Our job is to save the client. And Nadia, very upset, says it is an easy answer, Dodds. It should be. I would do everything and anything. Clearly she's in love with Dodds. Maybe he loves her on some level, but he is a realist, or pragmatic at the very least, and knows it's the job first. Maybe it's a booty call for him, who knows. The trauma team then exits the stairwell, which had been hit with a grenade, and we see flashbacks to Nadia saving Dodds intermittently throughout as she's thinking about it, but still on point with the target. And that is the end of the book, which honestly, I thought it was amazing how there was a parallel between the psycho, and there was a moment of his humanity which made Nadia question things. He was as inhuman as anybody slaughtering people, just as Strata was. And she starts to think, wait, this guy's more human than Trauma Team at some moments, but Trauma Team is meant to be the good guys. It's a blur of morals, and I think that whatever the culmination is in episode 4, I'm looking forward to exploring it with you. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. And as always, until next time, traveler.